so we've mentioned a few times, we've mentioned Buddhism, and I think there's this, you're saying that we can't pinpoint a particular moment that was the thing that went wrong for humanity with this trajectory of separation. But language does seem to be something that, the correlation between us having language and our incredible technological, powers of coordination and the kind of runaway freight train of civilization seems to be a huge kind of feature of this process. And, the wisdom in meditation is often, you can understand in terms of realizing that the language is is often this tied up with, I guess, anxious planning for the future, and suffering comes about through the sense of self and linguistic thought about what one wants to do in the world, and relaxing that can allow you to move into being. Do you see that as a strong connection in your work?
Yeah. The world of concepts that is embodied in language has its purpose, and it's a powerful tool for creation. However, when we get lost in that universe of concepts, then we can no longer use the tool intentionally. So I think it's really important to take breaks from conceptual thought and from language, which, that's one thing that meditation can offer, to ground us in a reality that's prior to the presentations of conceptual thought, which, when you get lost in them, they seem very real, and you might forget that they are ultimately just concepts. Actually, that's not quite accurate. I don't want to say that they're just concepts, because reality organizes itself around our concepts. At first, maybe it's just a projection of meaning and order onto the world. But when we live into that projection, then we create order and meaning around the concepts. So it's not so much that one world is real and one is not real, but it is like meditation and other practices, other body practices, for example, can be an anchor to another reality that is prior to the reality of concepts. Because obviously concepts are language. Where do they come from? Originally they came from pre-linguistic people who developed language. For what reason? This is a mystery in linguistics. Why did people start using language? There's all kinds of theories. To coordinate the hunt or something like that. None of them seem very compelling to me. The only one that seems compelling to me is that it evolved as a game. And the first use of it was to tell stories, not for some practical purpose that enhances our survival. Like, can we stop seeing everything in terms of whether it enhances survival or not? People do so many things that are not useful for survival, like playing music. That doesn't help you survive, but people do it in every corner of the earth. So that's I guess one of the conceptual lenses that then organizes reality around it. Because when we see the world as a contest for survival, then we create systems that reify that. For example, capitalism, where it is everyone is out there trying to get the best deal for themselves. And then, having built that system and living in that system, it seems that its description of human nature is true, that everybody is trying to get the best deal. Every time you shop online and you compare prices, you are doing that. So it looks real, but is that actually human nature? Or is that a product of those circumstances? So anyway, I'm just kind of illustrating the complexity of the relationship between concept and reality. Yeah.
And do you think the link to separation, I guess the way I would think about it is that, if you stop thinking with language and you just exist, you do have these kinds of states of feeling that are you kind of a reunion with the rest of reality, because concepts tend to kind of divide the world up and categorize the world. And especially the concept of the self, it's it produces separation because its concepts are fundamentally about division. Does that resonate with the way you think about it?
Yeah. And so maybe you go back into that state, that preconceptual state, and you have access to something true that was obscured by the shifting maze of concepts. And then from that state, you're like, okay, now I want to go back into the world of concepts and use them to enact this truth that I have seen. So that, it's not that once we realize that life is just a big drama, that we no longer condescend to participate in that drama. But we recognize maybe what is that drama really for? Maybe we had gotten lost in a drama that was horrible and ugly and wasn't moving toward a satisfying plot resolution. And so, or maybe we realized we weren't playing our role very well in that drama, and that if we played our role better, it could go in a much more beautiful direction. So we don't stay then in the nirvana state. We don't stay outside of concepts and outside of the game, but we take the realization from that state back into the game. I mean, this is the bodhisattva vow, essentially, because the game isn't bad. Things are possible by playing that game that are desirable, and the game itself can be beautiful. It's just like if you're an actor and you're in a play, and then maybe the performance is finished and you were really lost in your role in that performance. The character took you over completely. And in that moment, maybe in the deep recesses of your mind, you know that you're not actually, Othello, but in that moment, you are fully in character. And then the play is over, you step out of it, and you're like, oh yeah, actually, I'm Charles, I'm not Othello. But you don't say, oh, therefore I'm never going to act in a play again. You then take on the next role. So humanity collectively, we are awakening from the drama that we had been totally immersed in, that had taken a pretty bad turn, that had carried us to a place where we lost touch with fundamental truths about the world, about reality, about being human. And now we're kind of waking up to the fact that, hey, actually, this was just a story. This was a play. This was a drama, and we were all playing roles in it. And now we realize that. And we're coming now, more and more of us, into contact with the non-dual world, with the preconceptual world, through all kinds of experiences and realizations. And that doesn't mean that, oh, okay, we're never going to go back into story again, and symbol and representation and science and technology, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to exit the world. No, we're going to say, okay, what's the next story that we will participate in? What's the next role that we are going to play? And everyone can ask themselves that question too. Given the knowledge that is awakening in me, how do I play a good role? And maybe we remember, sometimes it's good to touch back into a prior reality to make sure that we're playing our role well. And we can only know if we're playing our role well and if the game itself is beautiful, if we look at it from outside the role and from outside the game. So that's the utility of what we call spiritual practices, which, and I think we can rehabilitate the word spirituality in this way because when it takes on connotations of otherworldliness, it can end up desacralizing the world. Because if the sacred is to be found in the spiritual, then the worldly becomes profane. And we end up treating the world as a profanity. And we engage in what is essentially sacrilegious behavior toward nature. So that version of spirituality is quite bankrupt. But when we understand this otherworldliness as a reconnection to a prior, then it can exercise a really powerful positive effect on our worldly affairs.